Ishiro Honda once said that the tragedy of monsters is the fact that they are born too tall, too strong, and too heavy. And at least in the context of the films, he was right. These attributes have led to Godzilla having many disagreements with the Japanese military. But at least in the context of pop culture, these attributes have led to the opposite for Godzilla. They've allowed him to prosper and produce 28 movies. But I want to analyze this and discover what it truly is about Godzilla that attracts people to him and why he's been so endearing. And the only way to truly do that successfully is to review every Godzilla movie ever made. Some people might be angry, but regardless, welcome to Zazubaar's Godzilla Palooza. Greetings, spacemen from the third planet from the black hole. I am Zazubaar, and welcome back to Godzilla Palooza. It's day 15, and oh boy, today we're getting into a classic. Today we are going to be reviewing one of my personal favorite Godzilla films, one that absolutely rocked my world as a child and continues to rock my world as an adult. Today, my friends, we are going to be reviewing 1974's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. Oh yes, it's finally time. We've been going through some rocky films through the past few days. Despite my liking of Godzilla vs. Gigan, it was no classic. And over the past few days, I think we've been going through some rocky times. So today, we're going to get into an escapist, fun classic. And I mentioned Gigan for a good reason, and I think it's comparable for a good reason. Jun Fukuda's Godzilla vs. Gigan is very comparable to Mechagodzilla because I feel like Mechagodzilla is taking what Gigan did and does it like 10 times better. Mechagodzilla, just like Gigan, takes the idea of doing a slightly campy sci-fi Godzilla film with a lot of out there ideas, but a film that takes itself seriously still, and does it like 10 times better and more interesting and just more badass than what Godzilla vs. Gigan was doing. And I can't quite explain what's better about this film over Gigan. It might be the non-use of stock footage. It might be the fact that I like Mechagodzilla better as a villain than I like Gigan. I don't know, but this movie is just way more effective at what Gigan set out to do. And I feel like Fukuda took the blueprints he had with Gigan and then made this film like 10 times better than that. I criticized Godzilla vs. Megalon for doing also a similar thing to what Gigan was doing, but doing it goofier. And I feel like if Megalon was never made and it wasn't a Godzilla film, I feel like Fukuda would have kept getting better with his Godzilla films because I feel like he was doing that throughout the series. Sea Monster's terrible. Son of Godzilla is quite good. Gigan is quite good. And Megalon isn't his movie, so, you know. And then, of course, Mechagodzilla was amazing. So I feel like Fukuda was just getting stronger with each film. Or he was continuing to get better, and now we come on the grand finale of his entire career on Godzilla with this epic film. This is easily Fukuda's best Godzilla movie. Easily. Son of Godzilla is a great Godzilla comedy film. This is just a great Godzilla film. There is comedy in it, and when it's there, Fukuda directs it great, and it's well written and well acted. But what makes this movie so good, for me at least, is the fact that it is so badass and Fukuda manages to make it badass. And it's royally escapist, and it's just so much damn fun. And it doesn't, the sci-fi-ness of it and the campiness of it doesn't distract from the badassitude of it. Like, this movie is one of my favorite Godzilla films, not because it's thought-provoking, not because it's a great character analysis of Godzilla or anyone. I love it because it's so much damn fun and because it is so badass. I have no major problems with this movie because I know what it's trying to be. If I was comparing this to the original Gojira, yes, it would be riddled with problems. Yes, it's goofy. Yes, it's sci-fi. Yes, Godzilla's a superhero. Yes, all these are problems if you're comparing it to the original Gojira. But if you do that, you're missing the point. This movie was not made with the intention of making a thought-provoking, horrific film. This film was made with the sheer intention of making an entertaining and just well-made Godzilla film. And in that regard, there is very few problems with it. And the problems that are there are practically negligible. So this is a fantastic film. We'll get into more detail in a second, but I just want to say this movie is fantastic, and it remains to be one of my favorite Godzilla films, and is easily Fukuda's best Godzilla film. So let's get into the plot of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. Oh, by the way, I should just say this quickly. This is also indeed the first introduction of one of Godzilla's most popular and parody enemies, Mechagodzilla, who would go on to inspire many creatures like him. But he is indeed, well, actually, he was kind of inspired by another creature. Mechagodzilla may not be the most original concept ever, but he's certainly badass, and his legacy as a Godzilla villain, or Godzilla character, not so much villain these days, but as a Godzilla character is a testament to that, and how important this film is in the franchise. But I suppose I'd be remiss not to talk about his inspiration. Mechagodzilla is not actually the first of his kind. He's probably the most parodied version of his kind, like a mecha insert name of character here. He's not the first. There is, in fact, a character that Toho did in 1966, I believe is the year. I could be wrong on that, but I think 66 was the year that they made King Kong Escapes. And King Kong Escapes had a character in it called Mechanic-Kong, who was a roboticized version of King Kong. Mechanic-Kong is not even kind of as badass as Mechagodzilla is. He doesn't have a fourth of the personality or the legacy. Mechagodzilla is definitely superior to him in every way, but he is definitely inspired by him. Their design is very similar. Well, the basis of them is very similar. A totally mechanical version of that monster. They're very similar. You couldn't have Mechagodzilla without Mechanic-Kong. So Mechanic-Kong is important for that, and Mechagodzilla may not be the most original thing ever, but he is certainly more badass than Mechanic-Kong, and his legacy goes on to say how much of an improvement he is over Mechanic-Kong. So, I just wanted to say that as well, that this is the introduction of Mechagodzilla, and he was in fact inspired by another creature. One of Toho's creatures, in fact, but not nearly as, but much more popular and better than his inspiration. So with all that said, let's get into the plot of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, in fact, one of its best aspects. Basically, the plot goes like this. There is a prophecy of the natives of Okinawa, this kind of Native American-esque part of Japan, called the Izumis. The Izumis created this prophecy that there would basically be this monster that would come to destroy the world, and that when a certain amount of things would happen, two monsters would arise to save the world. Two good monsters who would arrive to save the people, to stop this monster who was going to kill all the people. And basically the plot of the film mirrors that prophecy, kind of like the original Gojira in a weird way, but much more direct. In that there are aliens who have come to Earth from the third planet from the black hole. God, I love that name. And they have come with a weapon who at first seems to be the real Godzilla, who rises out of Mount Fuji and goes on a rampage across Japan. However, when he fights Anguirus, he gets hurt in a way where it's revealed that there's a little bit of metal underneath, and people start to get a little questioning of this Godzilla. But then it starts to get even more questionable. In fact, it's kind of cemented on what he is when he attacks an industrial area at night, and Godzilla rises out of the water, and the real Godzilla blows the ever-living shit out of this fake Godzilla, revealing it to be a cyborg called Mechagodzilla, who was created by these spacemen. The Mechagodzilla, in fact, defeats Godzilla in their first encounter. It's a spectacular fight, and Mechagodzilla is injured though. He's a little bit he's a little bit messed up from their fight, but Godzilla is just totally he has his clock cleaned by Mechagodzilla. He's bleeding and he's thrown into the water, but he leaves Mechagodzilla with some bruises. Mechagodzilla returns to the spaceman for assistance. We get quite a bit of human drama going on with the spaceman trying to retrieve a statue of an Izumi god called King Caesar, or King Caesar as they call him in the film. And they basically send out a spy to try and, well, an agent, to capture or to obtain the statue from two of our main characters in the film. During this kind of human filler before the final monster battle, they think they succeed and their agent is killed by a Interpol agent, but actually it was a fake, and the real statue was actually in the locker of a sea captain who was heralding the cruise that our two main characters were going on to get away from all this. So the rest of the film is about our main human characters, including this Interpol agent, trying to stop the spacemen from using Mechagodzilla to destroy the world. And they go to the base, they retrieve hostages that the spacemen had taken, some of their friends, and they get out and now have to go awaken King Caesar to defeat Mechagodzilla, who is going on a complete all-out attack today at 6 a.m. But the spacemen are still trying to prevent this from happening because they believe King Caesar can stop Mechagodzilla. I think they believe Godzilla to be dead, but they never say that. But I think that's kind of their mindset, that Godzilla's dead. So they think their only concern is King Caesar, or King Caesar. So the human cast goes to the Izumi Castle in Okinawa and attempts to awaken King Caesar, but there are spacemen there. They're shot by another Interpol agent, and they proceed with awakening King Caesar. They place the statue on top of the Izumi Castle, and when the sun rises in the west, the light from the sun bounces off two little receptors in the statue's eyes that awakens King Caesar by shooting these little heat lasers at a rock that blows up the rock face and reveals King Caesar to be sleeping. And then after we get a nice cute little song number by one of our main female cast, who's an Izumi, I don't know if she's a princess or not, but she's an Izumi important person. She basically prophesies this whole thing about Mechagodzilla. And she awakens King Caesar with a little song dedicated to him. And King Caesar awakens right just in time when Mechagodzilla is heading towards him, about to kill him, while he's still sleeping. Mechagodzilla has gone on the attack. King Caesar and Mechagodzilla have a not so impressive fight. I mean, it's cool, but King Caesar basically gets thrown around. And then right when King Caesar is about to be killed by Mechagodzilla, out of the water comes none other than Godzilla. The prophecy has become true. Two monsters have arisen to save the people, to stop this evil monster. There is a spectacular fight between the three monsters. In the end, King Caesar and Godzilla manage to beat the shit out of Mechagodzilla. And because of Godzilla turning himself into a magnetic force, we'll talk about that in a minute, they're able to twist the head off Mechagodzilla and totally destroy him. So Mechagodzilla is defeated, Godzilla returns to the sea, King Caesar returns to the rocks, and the spaceman's base is blown up. So that's basically the plot in a nutshell. So this plot is absolutely fantastic. It's extremely well paced, and every aspect is paid off. And all the characters are integral, and it's epic sci-fi, James Bond-esque fun. Now, what I mean by saying it's well-paced, and I talk about this with my Godzilla vs. Gigan review, and this film is even more well-paced, is that the plot just moves not only at a natural pace, but it moves at a natural pace, basically. Not a quick pace, not a slow pace, just a natural pace. The scenes that need to be a little slower, a little slow, and the scenes that need to be fast-paced and fun are fast-paced and fun. And overall, the plot really moves, and it moves in a great way. You really feel like you're watching an epic tale. The tone of the story is also extremely foreboding, and very epic. You feel like something major is about to go down with this Mechagodzilla event. You feel like, oh my god, something big is coming. And the plot is just told in a way where this prophecy, as the jux of the story, makes it seem more epic. And I really like the prophecy for that because it makes the story feel bigger and more integral than perhaps it might have without that. Like, my biggest problem with some of the past few Godzilla stories is that they're not really all that, you know, integral to the character. And I feel like that's just the way they're told. I mean, this, in the end, really isn't that integral to Godzilla, but it feels like it is with the way the story is told. Like, we feel like we cannot have Godzilla's universe without this story, and I really like that, because it makes this movie feel more important. I also really like the story in that it's really, really sci-fi and out there and kind of James Bond-esque, and I'm fans of all that, so I really like that about it. But all of that just makes the film more escapist and epic and just imaginative, and just a lot of fun. The plot of the story is just really fun and entertaining, and that doesn't mean it's not serious. I mean, it is, but it's not serious in a way where it's depressing or not fun to watch. It's just really, really fun and able to be taken seriously as a good campy Godzilla movie should be. So you walk out of it feeling really good and feel like you saw a great movie. So this movie has a great story. Everything about it just is all paid off and is for the most part a tight story. Like I don't feel like there's anything that just kind of shows up for no reason. Like, I feel like everything in the film is explained and done for a reason. There are some plot holes though. I'll get to them in a second, but I just really like the story, and I think it's well told, and I think it's epic, and I think it's perfect for what this movie should be. And is much more well told and epic than previous Godzilla entries, and this one feels like you cannot have this universe without this story, even though in the end you probably could. But the story is told in a way where it doesn't feel that way. So I want to talk about the James Bond-esqueness of it, because it's seeping with that. Everything with the agents and the Interpol agent and all the intrigue is all very, very James Bond. And I know some people do consider that a problem because it makes it not feel like a Godzilla movie anymore. And it feels a little bit, you know, it feels a little bit like it's kind of a product of the times, and that James Bond was a really popular property, in the late 70s. I can see that criticism. I can see how you might consider it a problem, but I don't feel like it is because it's just so much damn fun. Again, the James Bond-esqueness of it doesn't hurt the film for me. Again, probably because I'm a James Bond fan, but the thing that makes it, the reason it works in this film particularly, and it worked in Gigan a little bit, but it works even better in this film, is that it makes the movie feel more epic and feel like there's more parties involved than just the main human cast. Again, it makes the story feel really important because now we've got Interpol involved and all these different aspects, and it makes the movie feel really big and important. I love that about it. So I really like the James Bond-esqueness of it. I really like the invasion, the sci-fi-ness of it. My only problem with the story, and this is going to go a little bit into the aliens, but I guess I'll touch on them now, is that there's not really a great reason for the aliens to attack aside from stereotypical world conquest. And I don't like that only because Godzilla aliens have always had a reason to want to do that. They don't explain it in this film, in that they just seem to show up and it's almost like a given that they're trying to take over the world. And I'm like, I need more than that because this franchise has always given me more than that, so I expect that. So that's really disappointing, and again, it doesn't ruin the story because it still feels really epic. I almost just feel like that's a given, and I don't really like that about it. Like, I feel like there has to be some reason for them to attack, and for them to attack now. Because, I mean, we just had an alien invasion 2 years ago, so, you know, why now? So I really don't like that about it, but again, it doesn't ruin the story, because the story is just so epic and, fun. So, that is definitely a plot hole, and the lack of a motivation does definitely, it takes away from the gravity of the situation, but not in a way where it's like you don't feel any of it like we have with Gigan, or Megalon. You really do feel the gravity of this alien invasion, but the main reason is because there are so many characters involved, and because it's all taken very seriously, and it's just so epically told. But I feel like a lack of motivation makes it less than it could have been. let's get into some of the plot holes, and there are disappointingly quite a few. But again, they don't really ruin the movie. But there are some plot holes, and because we're doing a full-on review of this film, I feel like I should mention them. A couple of them that jump out to me are, one, the aliens have no reason to attack now. The second big one for me is that at the end of the film, when the aliens base blows up, there are 3 characters inside. There is the Interpol agent, there is a professor played by Akihiko Hirata named Professor Miyajima, and there's our main character in the film, Shizumi's brother, Shimizu, excuse me, that's Shimuzi. Shimizu's brother, Masako. They're all inside the aliens base, and they're the ones who blow it up. And the only one that we know escapes because he shows up in later scenes is Masako. But there's a line where Shimizu says... There's a line where Shimizu says to Miyajima's daughter that it's okay, your father has achieved a victory even though he's dead. Well, he doesn't say even though he's dead, but she's freaking out because she thinks he's dead. And he's just like, it's okay, your father achieved victory, implying that he's dead. Here's the problem with that. Masako escaped, and there's nothing in the film that says that something happened to Miyajima and the Interpol agent that didn't happen to Masako. When they break out and they get out of their bondage, the Interpol agent takes off both their handcuffs, and his as well. So there's no reason why Miyajima and this Interpol agent couldn't have escaped that Masako did. There's nothing in the film that supports that. So you're just left scratching your head when Shimizu talks about how their father's dead, yet Masako is standing right next to them. And he doesn't say anything about it either, so... what the hell? And that kind of leaves you scratching your head at the end of the film, like, how is he alive but they aren't? The Interpol agent isn't as much of a problem for me because it would make a little bit more sense if he just kind of disappeared at the end because he's an Interpol agent. But with her father, you would think, oh, so shouldn't he be right there with Masako and them? No, he's not. So it's confusing. The final plot hole for me, and this gets into the monsters a little bit, is towards the middle of the film, Godzilla comes up on an island in the middle of a rainy night and there's lightning striking. And he's all injured from his battle with Mechagodzilla and kind of brooding. And then he gets struck by lightning several times and it seems to make him more powerful. Fine. I don't care. Because Godzilla has had random reactions to electricity in this series. At this point, I don't care that he's getting stronger from it again. Doesn't bother me at all. Here's the problem with it. When Godzilla, towards the end of the film, comes back stronger, he turns himself into a magnetic force and brings Mechagodzilla towards him so he can snap off his head. How is he managing to do that by being struck by lightning? No one tries to explain it. The only thing they do is acknowledge that it's happening. The head alien leader says, oh, he's turned himself into a magnetic force. There is no reason how he should be able to do that. It's not explained. Sure, we see him getting struck by lightning, but that should only make him stronger. Why does it give him a new power? He's been struck by lightning before. In Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, he was struck by lightning, and that just woke him up and made him stronger. There's nothing, and in the past it's been even different than that. But why is it giving him magnetic powers? There's no explanation for it. I needed that because it's a big moment in the film, and this story is filled with so much sci-fi-ness that they should have explained it in technobabble. That's where you should have some technobabble, but there isn't. So that's a problem for me. Again, it doesn't ruin the movie. It is really cool to see Godzilla getting struck by lightning, and it's an epic scene. But seeing Godzilla and seeing Godzilla turn into a magnetic force, while somewhat silly, is also quite epic. But again, it's not explained, so you're left scratching your head. That's some of the plot holes. There are probably more that I'm not even thinking of right now, but the rest of them are very, very small. Those are the 3 big ones for me. The aliens not having a reason to attack. Not being explained how Masako survived and Miyajima and the Interpol agent didn't survive, and there being no explanation for how Godzilla is able to turn himself into a magnetic force. There's no explanation for any of those 3 things. The aliens' motivation is rectified in the next film. Here's the thing. This movie does not set up a sequel. It is a very standalone Godzilla film, so if there wasn't a sequel, there shouldn't be a problem with that. But without Terror of Mechagodzilla, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla does not stand up well on its own, because the aliens' motivations aren't explained until the next film. So that's a problem for me personally. Maybe some of you, it doesn't bother you because you're able to accept, oh, they just want world domination. Fine, it bothers me though because we've never had that kind of alien villain in this series before. So that bothers me, but it's rectified in the next film, so it's not a humongous problem. But again, it's a problem in that this movie should stand on its own. So it's kind of hit and miss with that. So that's the plot. Again, it's epic and fantastic, just there are some plot holes in it that don't make it perfect. So yeah. So the plot holes don't ruin the movie again, but they are noticeable plot holes, and the ending is a little bittersweet because of that. But in the end, it's just an epic, fantastically paced story with a lot of twists and turns and epic moments that make you go hoorah, and it's an epic story. So that'll bring us into the human characters and cast. Fukuda is going back to what he was doing with Son of Godzilla, and that's fantastic. I like this cast even better than the one of Godzilla vs. Gigan. This cast is probably even better than the one in Son of Godzilla, in that, again, they're all very distinct and memorable, they're all integral to the story, they're all very well-humored and likable, and all have stuff to do, and all get their own individual scenes and moments, and they're all fantastic. And unlike Destroy All Monsters, which had a big cast but no distinctive things about each human, this film does have that. Like Shimizu is kind of a bitter guy. His archaeologist girlfriend is kind of an innocent girl. Miyajima is kind of a bitter man, an old kind of scientist who won the Nobel Prize and is now kind of a recluse. Masako is kind of an ignorant younger brother, and it's all great. They're all fantastic, they're all well-humored, and Shimizu especially, I really like him as a Godzilla protagonist because he's kind of playful, in that when he randomly meets up with this archaeologist woman. Again, they met the first time on the Okinawa Big Dig, where they found the King Caesar statue and saw the prophecy about Mechagodzilla, or about the whole film, about the one monster coming to destroy the people and then two other monsters coming to save the people. They meet for the first time. But then on the plane they meet again, and she says that she's going to meet up with a famous archaeologist named Professor Wagura. And he says, oh, okay, I'm going to Tokyo too, so I'll drop you off there. Not even kind of acknowledging this professor's existence or importance. So they go to Tokyo and they go to this guy's house, and he gets out of the cab and goes right up and strolls right up to the door and knocks on the door really loudly. And she's paranoid because she's like, you're not invited, he's gonna get so mad. And then he answers the door and says, oh, Shimizu, welcome home. And then he says, hello, uncle. And she's just like freaking out. And he's just like, I brought a guest for you. And Professor Wagura is just like, wow. And I love that moment, so cool. And it's also helped by the fact that Professor Wagura is played by a Godzilla actor I really like named Hiroshi Kuzumi. And he's going to make an appearance in Tokyo SOS. And we here at Godzilla Palooza know him better as Professor Mirai from Mothra vs. Godzilla and Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. So he's a welcome addition to the cast. Speaking of returning cast members, Akihiko Hirata makes, I think, his final appearance in the franchise. Yes, I believe this is his final appearance in the Godzilla franchise. I know it's sad, but what you gonna do? So this is Akihiko Hirata, his last Godzilla film. He plays Professor Miyajima, and he is absolutely fantastic with the role. Good to see him back as a scientist, and I like him that he's kind of an older scientist here. Like, he's not the kind of morally ambiguous younger scientist that he was with Dr. Serizawa. Now he's kind of this older, more experienced, bitter scientist with Miyajima. He's not quite as developed or as interesting as Serizawa, even kind of, but he's likable and definitely brings an aura of realism to Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla with Miyajima. So I really, really like Akihiko Hirata's role in this film. In fact, it's probably my second favorite Godzilla role from him. Yeah, right after Serizawa. So I'm going to say it's my second favorite Godzilla role from him. He's great. And overall, the characters are likable and good-humored. I'm going to talk about the aliens a little bit more generally and cast-wise now. The spacemen from the third planet from the black hole. I really like the aliens. They're all really threatening and BA and all that. And, you know, they're cool and threatening. Here's the problem with them. Again, they don't have much of a personality only because they are so, they have no motivations. So they don't get a distinct personality, one of tragedy or horror or hatred or anything. They're just kind of there to conquer, and I don't like that because they are otherwise really good. And I want their motivations. Again, we get it in the next film, but even still, I needed it here. I love the alien leader. The alien leader, Kuronuma, is one of my favorite Godzilla villains. He is just so epic and terrifying, and oh my god, I love him. He's one of my favorite Godzilla villains. And he's fantastic in this film. Very threatening, he kind of reminds me of Turo from Mothra vs. Godzilla, and then he's kind of got a slimy charm to him, and I really like that. He seems like a kind of a Kenji Sahara-esque character, although, I mean, Kenji Sahara is in fact in this film. He has a cameo as the captain of the ship, but he kind of reminds me of a Kenji Sahara-esque Godzilla role, so I really love him. So he's one of my favorite Godzilla villains. So I love the villains. I just wish they had motivations. Let's talk about the monsters. The monsters are really impressive to me because there are four of them in this film, and all of them are integral to the plot. None of them are missing, you know, or just kind of there. Like, as much as I like Godzilla vs. Gigan, I feel like Ghidorah and Anguirus are just kind of along for the ride. Like, I feel like the only two that really have great integralness to the story is Godzilla and Gigan. So I like that all the monsters in this film have an integral part of the story. And I'll talk about them kind of one by one. Let's talk about them in order. So let's talk about Mechagodzilla first. Of course, Mechagodzilla is the main threatening force of the film. So you know, he's kind of, his integralness to the story is kind of, you know, doesn't need to be said. But Mechagodzilla is one of my favorite Godzilla enemies. He's badass and intimidating, and just this version of him is awesome. He's nothing more than a no-nonsense badass. I mean, he's a robot, and his intimidation factor is up high. So I really love this version of Mechagodzilla. Probably my second favorite. Yeah, so I really love this version of Mechagodzilla. Absolutely fantastic. And he's just BA, and very threatening, and works great as a Godzilla villain. Godzilla is very integral to this story because, unlike in Megalon, I love the way he comes to his, Mechagodzilla comes to his attention, and that Anguirus is the first monster to fight Mechagodzilla and get his ass handed to him by him, and he calls out for Godzilla, trying to get his attention to come and stop this thing who's impersonating him. So I really like him being attracted to it, but the big thing about Godzilla in this film is that this is my favorite version of the superhero Godzilla, and it's even better than the Gigan one. He is a badass superhero who isn't one that's a goofy protector of the Earth like some of Godzilla's appearances are, like in Megalon and like in Hedorah. In this film, he's a badass force of destruction turned to good, kind of like the Hulk in a weird way, but not as, you know, kind of radical as the Hulk is. But he reminds me of that in that he's really badass and destructive, but not this goody-goody two-shoes. He's very destructive and powerful. He just happens to be fighting for good. So I love Godzilla in this movie. He's an absolute badass, and this film makes me like that design. I really don't like this design by principle, but the way it's shot here and how badass Godzilla is kind of makes me like this design. So I love Godzilla in this. Let's talk about King Caesar now. King Caesar or whatever. I really like him as well. He's cool looking, but in the end, he's probably the second most integral to the story monster next to Mechagodzilla, even more so than Godzilla, because the whole plot is kind of centered around him waking up. It's disappointing in the end because when he wakes up, that's it. He wakes up and then he gets his ass handed to him by Mechagodzilla. Really, Godzilla is the one who defeats, Mechagodzilla in the end. And King Caesar is ultimately disappointing. I feel like he's just kind of like, oh, he's woken up now he's going to be a badass, right? No, he gets his ass handed to him. He's cool looking again, but definitely disappointing. He's not as impressive as he's cracked up to be, and he's nothing compared to Godzilla, so he's disappointing, but he looks cool, and he's got an awesome roar. It's kind of a reworking of Kong's roar from King Kong vs. Godzilla and Sonda's roar from War of the Gargantuas, so it's a mix of those two, and also some original stuff in there as well. So I really love his roar. So let's talk about the final monster. Let's talk about Anguirus. Anguirus is small. He has a small role in this film. He's only in 2 scenes, but he's kind of carrying over what he was in Godzilla vs. Gigan of the whole Godzilla's best pal thing, and that he calls out for Godzilla to come destroy this thing, and the big reason for why people are questioning whether or not Mechagodzilla, when he's disguised as Godzilla, if it's the real Godzilla, is that he beats the shit out of Anguirus, and it's a well-known fact that they're pals. So, I like Anguirus' use in this film, and he's kind of used as a way to give a hint to the audience, hey, this isn't the real Godzilla. And I also like how, he's the thing that attracts Godzilla to the area. So his role is small but integral. So I like Anguirus in this film. He's just not ultimately integral to the story, but I don't really care because, well, he is integral to the story, but his role is really small, but I don't care because he is important to the story. So Anguirus is awesome, just not entirely huge in the role. So that'll bring us into the effects. Oh my god, they're so great. They're absolutely my favorite effects of the later Showa series. Yes they are. I actually like these effects a little bit better than Mechagodzilla. Terror of Mechagodzilla. These effects are awesome, they're well shot, and they look epic. This is the guy doing the effects here, I forget his name. I think his name is something Nakano. He was kind of the underling of E.G. Tsuburaya. And in fact, he was, I think he was in fact taught firsthand by Tsuburaya on how to do Sudomation. And his work on this is absolutely fantastic. His explosions are epic. Everything he does is absolutely fantastic. It's different from what Tsuburaya was doing. And I really like that because it doesn't seem like just trying to copy what Tsuburaya was doing and being a pale imitation of it. It's different enough where it comes off of its own style, but still great. So I love the effects, I think they're great. That last fight, oh my god, is it epic. It's easily the best part of the movie, even though it's got competition with that, because that fight at the Foundry is fantastic as well. But the last fight is absolutely fantastic. The explosions, the way the 3 monsters fight, it's just great. My only problem is that there's not as much great tag team brawling between King Caesar and Godzilla as there was with Anguirus and Godzilla in Godzilla vs. Gigan. I feel like King Caesar is ultimately underused in that, but even still, I like him, and I like that last fight. The fight between Godzilla and Mechagodzilla is awesome. And Mechagodzilla's powers are just, oh my god, they're so cool. And I love how Godzilla and King Caesar just run through explosions, just like a scene out of Platoon. And they just run through the explosions. There's explosions going on everywhere. Mechagodzilla is unloading all of his weapons on the 2 monsters, yet they still make it out. It's just an epic shot. This movie is just epic overall, and that last fight is encapsulates that. So I love that final monster battle. This review is getting really long, so I think we should start to wrap it up. I also like how elaborate the effects are. From the sci-fi stuff down to the monster stuff, just everything is really elaborate and awesome, and I really love it. I love the shots where it's Mechagodzilla in the alien's base, and he's standing in the background, and you see the aliens and people walking in front of the feet. It's just really cool. So I love the effects in this film. I think they're very well done. And overall, I just think this is a well-made film. The Godzilla suit is a little different than it was in Megalon. As I said, it gets better in each film, but this movie is the one that kind of convinced me that it's good, it's cool. Terror of Mechagodzilla, it just looks BA, but this film, it looks cool. The big reason for why it looks better than the one in Megalon is the head. The thing looks more organic than Megalon's, the Megaro Goji suit did. I mean, it's still technically that same suit, but the head looks more organic and looks more intimidating than the one in Megalon, so I like it for that. So I really loved this Godzilla suit. It's much better than the one we had in Megalon. And again, I know it's the same suit, but with a different head, and the different head makes all the difference, and the way it's shot. So I love this Godzilla suit, and overall I think everything about it is well done. The Mechagodzilla suit doesn't even look like a suit, it looks like a robot, so that's great. And King Caesar and Anguirus both look great. So all the effects are awesome and very elaborate and fantastic. The last thing I want to talk about before we go to rating is the music by Masaru Sato. This is easily my favorite music score by Masaru Sato. In that not only does it fit the film's epic tone and complement everything that's going on in the story, but it's just so damn catchy. I found myself after watching this movie again for this review, I was humming it to myself at work and felt very embarrassed because of that, but it's damn cool music. And easily Masaru Sato's best Godzilla score. I love it, it's great, it's extremely catchy, and again, it fits the tone. Everything the monsters are doing and everything that's going on screen is just, it fits with the music perfectly, and it just creates a more epic atmosphere than times when music doesn't fit actions in Godzilla fights, like we have with King Kong versus Godzilla. I also, my favorite action to music beat in the film is when Godzilla and Mechagodzilla are fighting in the Foundry. In that the music just is so epic, and the fight going on is epic because you're seeing basically two Godzillas fighting. It's just so goddamn epic, and it's epic. So I love the music. I think it's Masaru Sato's best Godzilla score. I think it's fantastic. This score rivals some of Ifukube's stuff, even though Ifukube is in many ways untouchable, but it's absolutely fantastic music. So I love it. So that's Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. One of my favorite Godzilla films ever made. It's absolutely epic. I love everything about it. There are some plot holes, but they're ultimately forgivable for how damn fun and entertaining this film is. Any problem you can find in the film is ultimately overcomable by how good you feel about yourself after you watch the movie, and how escapist it is, and how epic it is. I absolutely love this movie. I think it's fantastic. One of my favorite Godzilla films, and it's just awesome. But because of the plot holes, I don't feel like I can give this movie a perfect score. So I'm going to give it the closest thing I can give to a perfect score. Because of it's so incredibly entertaining, because it's so imaginative, because it's so much fun, and because whenever I watch it, I just feel good about myself, I'm going to give Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla a 4.5 out of 5. It's 0.5 away from being perfect. The plot holes bring the movie back a bit, and that the ending is a little bittersweet in how you're like scratching your head at what happened to Miyajima, but otherwise it's absolutely flawless. There's nothing else wrong with it aside from the plot holes, and it's absolutely fantastic. If you haven't seen it, you have no soul. You need to see this movie. It's absolutely entertaining. I think if you're introducing a kid to Godzilla, this is absolutely one of the first films you should show them. It's a serious yet campy and fun Godzilla film. It's absolutely fantastic. Check it out. 4.5 out of 5. Fantastic movie. Everything in it works. The only thing holding it back again is the plot holes. But even again, they're forgivable. I don't feel like I can give the movie a confident 5 out of 5 without without taking those plot holes into account. So I feel like the best score I can give it is a 4.5 out of 5. It's almost perfect, but the plot holes leave for a bittersweet ending. So that'll about do it for this review of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. And tomorrow on Godzilla Palooza, we're going to continue on with our strain of fantastic Godzilla films, and we're also going to conclude the Showa series. It's been a long ride, but tomorrow is the end of the Showa series, and we're going to start getting into some of the other Godzilla films. When tomorrow we end the Showa series with the sequel to Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, Terror of Mechagodzilla from 1975. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for that review. Sayonara.